one thing that I tell my guys is essentially the first thing that we want to focus on is hydration. One thing I love to do is introduce a fresh organic coconut. Basically have it ready, bring it to the show with you, cold, drink it right away. And if you are a pro and you want to continue to climb the ladder in the professional ranks, you have to have a champion's mentality. You have to have a pro's mentality and not an amateur's mentality. It's a professional mentality. It's completely different. So my first plan of attack is obviously I want to add back in micronutrients that may have been missing or reduced leading into the show. Always going to be coming in the form of fruits. So essentially, we're going to get some high polyphenol, high antioxidant fruits right back into the mix if we did have to pull them for any reason. Not that fruits can make you fat, but some people will have to pull from those areas. Hello champions, my name is AJ Sims and welcome to another episode of Kingdom Built Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be covering a very highly requested topic in terms of post-show rebound in the form of nutritional adherency, post-show cardio modalities, and training. How do you go about it? What's the mindset? What's the mentality? And how do we set ourselves up for what I call a progression season, also known as an off season, for the remainder of the year so that you can set yourself up to be your absolute best the next time you step on stage. Like I said, this is going to be strictly about competitive bodybuilding in all aspects post-show. Very, very highly requested in terms of people want to know how you go about it. This is a very, very hot topic in the industry that I'm involved in. It has been since I entered this industry over 23 years ago. Now, the next show that you do can be really won and lost in the next 24 hours in the way your mindset is, your mentality, essentially, by your actions proceeding with food and your views of food. Many of us have unhealthy views of food or have struggled in the past or currently struggling with how we view food and our relationship with food, specifically in the fitness industry, because it is so regimented and strict throughout a specific period of time. Many are so food focused leading into the show and specifically post show fall to the big error, pitfall, slippery slope of absolutely losing all control because the basically time crunch is over. The goal has been either achieved, not achieved. But the fact of the matter is if you're looking at a show far in the distance, food is going to be your number one comfort in all aspects. And that can be a very slippery slope, like I said, where you can really set yourself up for net negative effects in all sorts of internal aspects. It's not just from a physical external aspect that you can lose pretty much in a few days, week, or 2 weeks. The totality of dieting for 12, 16, 20 weeks and the appearance of that, you can lose all sorts of proper internal functions in terms of blood pressure going through the roof via the water retention that comes and the body's ability to actually flush it due to maybe kidney imbalance or poor kidney health at the end of a prep, which we will definitely get into how we can take care of that before, during, and after prep. And all sorts of things that can just go awry when you're, reaching for that low-hanging fruit of food being in front of you and just whatever you want, whenever you want type of mentality, but actually approaching the mentality with food in essence of the number one thing that you think of is proper digestion and actually feeling good and what is going to set you up for the next day, for the next week, for the next months, into the next show, however long that may be away. So really setting the mindset on a healthy relationship with food, which starts literally the second you get off stage, if not prior to that. But I'm going to talk in terms of the show's over, you're heading backstage, you're getting ready to put your clothes on, regardless of if you won or lost. So you may be feeling phenomenal on cloud nine, can't wait to go see your family as soon as you exit the backstage area. Or you want to sit down with your head down and just absolutely feel defeated and deflated because you've put your entire soul identity in your placing on stage, which we're also going to get into that as well. But really focusing on the relationship you have with food and also the shift in mindset of rest and recovery period and how can we optimize every internal organ and everything on the internal environment firing at the most optimal rate. Chances are, because you've been at such a deficit for a specific period of time, because your total daily energy expenditure has super exceeded your caloric intake, you are very tired, you are very depleted, you are very malnourished to an extent. So we need to start correcting that and fixing that right out the gate. So one thing that I tell my guys is essentially the first thing that we want to focus on is hydration. Now, hydration after being in somewhat of a dehydrated state for 24, 48, 72 hours, and then, of course, a lot of you are using pharmacological diuretics on top of that, and you're also playing with sodium and potassium and other mineral and electrolyte levels. We are at a very, very sensitive state. So we need to jump right into hydration. We're not going to get that through just drinking water. We are going to get that through minerals and electrolytes. One thing I love to do is introduce a fresh organic coconut. Basically have it ready, bring it to the show with you, cold, drink it right away, and go straight into something like a Body Bio, which is an electrolyte concentrated blend that is the same as your serum blood levels as well. So it's a phenomenal way to introduce all your essential electrolytes and minerals immediately post-show. And then, of course, we want to go into some sort of food. So always diving into really heavy-based, water-based fruits. We have a list here of watermelon, berries, specifically strawberries being higher, cantaloupe, papaya, which is also going to aid in digestion for whatever foods that you're potentially going to be eating that night, apples, and like I mentioned, a fresh organic coconut to drink. So then from there, we know that you typically will head out with family, friends, or loved ones to a restaurant of your choice. And if you've had a coach, you usually will ask your coach, what can I eat? Now, your coach may lay out exactly what you can eat, but you've already made up in your mind because you've negotiated that no matter what he says, I'm still going to go overboard because I'm going to eat what I feel I deserve. Now, again, this is the unhealthy relationship you have with food. For the listeners or people that are watching right now, really check yourself. Do a self-inventory checklist of your relationship with food from a mental standpoint. And then once you can approach that in a healthy standpoint, you can go out with your family, friends, and loved ones, and you can be present. You can be present in the moment and enjoy their company and enjoy the fact that you just got through an extremely hard period of dieting, adhering to training, cardio, and reaching extremely low body fat levels, and you competed. And hopefully you enjoyed the day. Regardless of the outcome, I tell my guys this all the time, if you're not having fun, if this is not something you truly enjoy, don't do it anymore, because this should be fun. We should enjoy the process of everything all the way into show day, into performing, into getting on stage and showing that finished product and not basing our entire identity on our placing. So from there, we go into, like I said, the meal out with the family. So I always tell my guys, this is what I would like you to stick to. Really watch, heavy, crazy heavy sodium laden foods and high dairy foods. We want to stay away from that. We want to eat foods where we actually feel good. You should not go to bed with your stomach feeling like it's going to explode and your heart rate through the roof because you loaded up on so much food so fast. Because again, this is a mental thing you're going to struggle with throughout the course of the next 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, which can really cause you to completely wreck what we call the rebound post-show. So I always say it starts that night. It really, really starts that night and how you approach it in a professional manner. If you want to be a professional, or if you are a pro and you want to continue to climb the ladder in the professional ranks, you have to have a champion's mentality. You have to have a pro's mentality and not an amateur's mentality. It's a professional mentality. It's completely different. So approaching that is just eating foods that you enjoy but that make you really feel good. We don't want a systemic inflammatory response where we just feel awful, can't sleep that night, can't rest, and it just trickles into the next day and the next day and the next day. So then we get into Sunday, the day after the show specifically. One day after the show, I usually have my athletes enjoy a breakfast of choice, again, in some controlled form or fashion. And then we get them to do some sort of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, just walking if they're out and about in a different city or country, or doing some sort of light cardio, low intensity, steady state. Typically no gym that day. I want the body to be able to rest and recover, which is a good caveat going into the next week. Now, listen, guys, I understand how it feels right after a show. You're highly, highly motivated. You're coming off this adrenaline rush. The tanner's still on you. It's still running in the shower. You can still smell it. You can still understand kind of what happened on stage, backstage. You can remember what the pump felt like. You can remember what it felt like posing. And you want more of it. But you want so much more that you're willing to do whatever it takes. And that is a short-term dopamine release, adrenaline, neurotransmitters, neuromodulators that is going to push that type of mindset where you're just ready to just smash it for the next couple weeks. And I see this more times than not, that if we don't approach this correctly in a smart, methodical way, usually by 5 or 6 weeks post-show, guys are starting to negotiate with themselves and they're skipping meals and they're skipping training, or this happened, or they're adding cheat meals 3 or 4 times a week, and they've completely wrecked their entire rebound. So how do we approach the following week? Well, we simply make sure that when we go to the gym, if we do train, that we're doing 2 to 3 reps in reserve, RIR, per set. We've reduced our volume back about 40 to 50%, honestly. It's a very short duration session of just getting blood flow, getting into the gym, seeing your people, having fun, doing new movements, and not feeling pressured from a mental standpoint. You don't want to feel pressured because you felt pressured for 12, 16, 20, 24 weeks. It's time to have fun. And this is a more, not only a physical reset, but a mental reset. Okay? So we're getting into the gym still. Maybe we're training 3 or 4 times a week. I tell guys, don't train legs until the end of that week, if at all. Again, we know that you probably haven't trained legs for, at that point, 7 to 10 days. You guys want to train legs. I get it. But we still need to make sure you're well, properly hydrated, and we're starting to recover and reset the body so that we can have proper functionality in muscle contractions with avoiding injuries in the gym, essentially. The last thing you want to do post-show is tear a muscle or get injured. So we were in the gym. We're in there 3 or 4 times a week, the week after the show, getting blood volume in there, pumping the muscle, feeling good. We're enjoying it. We're keeping our non-exercise activity thermogenesis up through steps. 12 to 14,000 is typically a sweet spot. And then cardio, as far as low intensity steady state, I typically reduce it 30 to 40% of their highest rate of cardio during the prep. So we are still maintaining total daily energy expenditure, but we are not going above and beyond because, of course, now we're starting to bring the calories up. We're bringing down the stimulus to fatigue ratio, and we're focusing on sleep. This is a huge key factor, is really getting sleep. A lot of you have not slept for weeks, whether that is because you were using performance enhancers that were causing insomnia, too many stimulants that were causing insomnia, or simply just couldn't shut your mind off because the show was just on your mind 24/7. So now we need to sleep. We need to rest. We really need to get back into that parasympathetic state and, again, allow your body to start resetting and recovering post-show. I always recommend and encourage my guys to get blood work done immediately. And typically, if you've been with me, you know that I call for blood work every 3 to 4 weeks anyways during a prep. And don't be scared to do this. You should not have the mindset of, I've been prepping for a show, so I already know my labs are going to be horrible, so I don't want to pull them. That's insanity. That is essentially like driving your car around town with smoke coming out of it and not wanting to look under the hood because you're afraid of the potential cost that it's going to take to fix it, right? You don't want to see. So essentially you have that ignorance is bliss mentality. Not something we can do when it comes to our health. So I always encourage my guys, pull those labs, let's see them, let's see our baseline, and let's see what we need to roll into so we can fix whatever issues we may be having from the contest prep, from the show week, and then leading into the next week so we can make sure that everything's firing internally so that everything can fire properly externally. They go hand in hand. They synergize and cascade together. So now that we've covered the first week of training and cardio adherency, nutritionally, what do we do? So my first plan of attack is obviously I want to add back in micronutrients that may have been missing or reduced leading into the show. Always going to be coming in the form of fruits. So essentially, we're going to get some high polyphenol, high antioxidant fruits right back into the mix if we did have to pull them for any reason. Not that fruits can make you fat, but some people will have to pull from those areas. And we will add those back in. We're going to make sure that we have an optimal amount of all the micronutrients from selenium and iron and zinc and copper and tyrosine and all these things that can make you feel better and get all the internals functioning properly, specifically thyroid being the focus on those. So very, very important as well as if you've been using beta-2 adrenergic agonist and alpha-2 adrenergic agonist, that you're not completely taking them out post-show one day after the show, that you're slowly titrating them down over the course of the next 2 weeks or 3 per se, depending on what your labs show post-show. Again, another reason why you want to take those labs. You want to see where you're at. But bringing those micronutrients back in, which you never really should have dropped them, but making sure that they're introduced back in right after the show, we are making sure that we are functioning properly and we are running everything at the most optimal level post-show. Very, very important that these go hand in hand. Another thing that I always recommend my guys is go get some IV vitamins the following week. I'm a big believer in glutathione intravenously or intramuscularly, which of course you can find at Amino Asylum in the form of Liver Restore. It's phenomenal. 200 milligrams of glutathione, which is absolutely phenomenal for detoxification, insulin sensitivity, and everything that you want for immune boosting post-show going forward. It's another thing that you should keep in your arsenal, honestly, year around. You can't go wrong without it. But getting also those IV vitamins as well is getting you a quick hit and surplus right after the show. And a lot of these clinics have a really good hydration package to go along with that. Again, so we're focusing on proper hydration immediately post-show. All right, so covering micronutrients, we're going into macronutrients. So typically my first approach is going to be increasing carbohydrates and timing those carbohydrates. Now, depending on the body, everybody's a little bit different, but insulin sensitivity for most is extremely high. Ghrelin is typically extremely high, which is an appetite stimulant, and leptin is a little lower, if not much lower, which is an appetite suppressant. So you have these two stimulating and suppressant hormones that are off, with ghrelin being much higher. Therefore, you are absolutely insatiable for food. You've all experienced this if you've done a show, that you are just more hungry. The more someone feeds you, you get more hungry and you become so food focused that you literally it's almost worse than right before the show. And it's also mental, because you know that there's no show a week or two out that's keeping you from that discipline of adhering to that nutrition. So, a spoon of peanut butter here, a couple nuts here, some rice cakes, peanut butter and jam here, maybe a little ice cream here. No big deal. Trust me, guys, that stuff adds up and you will start accruing, acclimating body fat so much faster. Again, ruining this rebound time that you could be making absolute optimal progress to set yourself up for a solid progression season into a phenomenal next year or next time you step on stage to really be your best version. So again, a lot of it is mental, but we're speaking on the hormonal level of ghrelin and leptin. So be very mindful that those are the two hormones and they're very off balance typically at that time. And again, ghrelin being the appetite stimulant, leptin being the appetite suppressant. This is why you're so hungry. It's just a pivotal part in really trying to control it and kind of recognizing it too. I think is important that you recognize that this is what's going on from a physiological standpoint. Therefore, you should be able to control it much better. So as I was saying, I like to really increase carbohydrates, usually pre-workout and post-workout right out the gate. That's going to be my focal point, as well as probably adding an intra-workout carbohydrate source as well. And then from there, I start titrating up carbohydrates meal by meal as the weeks progress. However, in the beginning stages, I always like to backload somewhat other carb meals so that at night, when that hunger hits the majority of people the most, they can have a pretty decently heavily carb meal before bed, reducing cortisol, increasing serotonin, and allowing them to sleep much better. Again, giving them something also to look forward from a mental standpoint, that there's carbs coming at night when I'm this hungry, and then also kind of making that into a food variety, right? So it could be in the form of, protein pancakes. So I have a recipe for protein pancakes that, satisfies the sweet tooth for a lot. And food volume being also a focal point too. We can really volumize these protein pancakes with, organic baking soda and psyllium husk or a form of fiber to really increase the volume, and utilizing egg whites, which is a very low calorie protein source, and make these things just ginormous compared to, say a cup of white rice. So we can utilize those. We can utilize organic pumpkin in there. There's so many different things that we can do, because food volume is really going to help with satiety. And the more satiated you are, the more adherency you have to, stick to the diet essentially. So very important to utilize things that are very, very voluminous in the stomach, which we will get into. So like I said, timing those carbohydrates pre and post first right out the gate, and then saving some room for carbohydrates pre-bed, allowing you to sleep better post-show right out the gate, so that you can reduce that cortisol systemic inflammatory response from the stress just being so high and being in a sympathetic nervous system state pretty much the whole prep, right? So we're shifting gears completely to allow your body to actually start accruing muscle tissue during this time, and really feel good from a neurological standpoint too, because chances are is you haven't been there mentally for the last couple weeks. If you're a husband, if you're a father, you have responsibilities. So it's time to make sure that you flip the switch. Now, I'm an avid believer in you never turn it off. But if we're being totally honest, you're not fully there the way that you should be. But that comes in the nature of the sport. Essentially, it's an extreme sport. And I'm speaking from a competitor's standpoint in the past. I know the mentality that it takes to get there, as well as I know what it takes after a show. And I know the pitfalls that you can fall into post-show that can really, really negate your progress, which, you're listening to this because you want to make progress post-show. So that's why we're here, guys. But I digress. So also into the macronutrient standpoint, we want to talk about protein, right? So if you're an enhanced athlete, 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass is still perfectly fine post-show. My focal point for athletes is to bring up their carbohydrate intake. I want it for glycogen. I want it for energy. I want it for sleep. I want it for recovery. And I want to give them just enough protein to allow them to recover properly, still grow, but the emphasis on the increased caloric intake is going to come in the form of carbohydrates. The secondary form is going to come in the form of dietary essential fats. Now, for the natural competitor, you're looking at 1 to 1.25 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. Of course, you need a little bit more than an enhanced athlete to recover that muscle tissue, and you also need to focus more on essential fats coming up for proper hormone stimulation, proper hormone production as a whole. So when it comes to essential fats, essentially with a enhanced guy, we'll slowly start titrating them up, and we'll bring in different fats depending on how their body has responded throughout the prep or prior progression season. I like things like extra virgin coconut oil, as it is 50% medium chain triglycerides, MCTs, but it's also high in caprylic acid, which can really help with gut healing post-show. So extra virgin coconut oil is phenomenal. And also keeping a very high quality, high EPA, DHA fish oil, anywhere from 10 to 12 grams a day, is also going to be very, very important in your essential fat stack of your daily macronutrient intake. Also, other fat sources could be free-range organic eggs, so we can get the choline production up, which is going to help with cognition and mental clarity and focus, along with your total lipid panel, cholesterol, HDL, LDL, all these things, getting them back on track and being able to stimulate proper lipid transportation and having a good lipid profile. And from there, other fats can come from animal sources. If you have wild caught salmon in the mix, you have game meats from bison to venison to elk, some grass-fed red meats that maybe have been pulled out right before your show, adding those in a couple times a week as well, bringing the dietary fats straight and directly from those sources as well. And there's other sources of fats. Again, you know what works best for you, and you know what you've been using throughout the process of the diet. The whole purpose of this topic is about simply bringing dietary fats, depending on if you're an enhanced or non-enhanced athlete, to the amount that you need to start stimulating better hormone production, obviously being more essential towards the natural competitor. So we always kind of have to eyeball our conditioning. And again, the focus being on bringing that carbohydrate intake eventually up into a big surplus and eventually reaching back into high days and what I call supersaturation days as well, heading into the progression season. One thing I do want to note, I touched briefly on food volume. How do we get more satiety during those weeks and months of high ghrelin and lower leptin? Well, there's some tricks that I like. Sparkling water is phenomenal. Anything in a carbonated form is going to fill up your stomach a whole lot better. Black coffee is phenomenal. Even decaf can help really regulate appetite and suppress it. And then we have things that keep you fuller longer because of the volume of it, right? So Arrowhead Mills has puffed kumite and puffed brown rice. So it's this little puffed cereal that is very low in carbohydrates per cup. And you can load that bowl up with a whey protein isolate shake post-workout. And you're going to have a very voluminous meal to, again, really fill the stomach up. Sun fiber. Sun fiber is the purest form of fiber that you can basically use on the market. Of course, Gut Revival by my company Cement Factory Nutrition has sun fiber in it, which is also going to suppress appetite to an extent. So all of these things in the form of food volume, another great hack. I mean, we live in 2024. We can use Ninja Creamies to make our protein powder extremely voluminous with a little bit of xanthan gum to really fill the gut up, right, for more satiety so you can adhere to the program, adhere to the diet, and fight off those hunger cues. Stay busy. It's a mental thing too. It's a mentality. Stay busy. If you have the urge to eat something, go for a 10-minute walk. Grab some salt, put it in some water, as long as blood pressure is at bay. Go for a 10-minute walk, get some sun, and just stay busy. Stay busy, because if you sit around and all you do is think about food, again, you have a very unhealthy relationship with food. And I've been there personally. I'm speaking from experience. I remember as a teenager doing teen nationals, and I couldn't wait to come home to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning to have a bowl of cereal just for the heck of it. It's just things like this are the wrong mentality if you want to be a champion, if you want to be a professional, if you want to approach this bodybuilding competition, if you want to approach your competitive bodybuilding career or hobby in the best way that you possibly can go about it. So it's very important that you're adhering to every element of the program and you're not just in analysis paralysis, you're not guessing. There is a methodical approach and you understand what's going on internally. Therefore, you can perform at your most optimal so that you can look your best externally. So very important. So some key things, guys. Post-show, make sure you have a healthy relationship with food. Shift your mind, shift your perspective on food as its fuel. You can still make your food that is fuel taste phenomenal. Make it voluminous so your satiety is taken care of and adherency can be more compliant. Reduce overall volume the first 1 to 2 weeks post-show with 2 to 3 reps in reserve. Stay away from failure. Make sure we are allowing everything in our body from a central nervous system standard recover, shifting more from that sympathetic to parasympathetic, that fight or flight, into rest and digest. Okay, so these are very important tools and keys. Reducing overall daily energy expenditure by reducing your cardio modalities 30 to 40%, keeping your non-exercise activity thermogenesis up, so we're still keeping our bodies moving. Pulling extensive blood work post-show, very important. Don't be afraid to do it. I encourage you guys, go pull those labs and go see them no matter how bad they may look. That way we know how we can fix it. We need to look under the hood of the car and we have to know how we can approach this in a methodical way. Very, very important. And allow your mind to rest in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Allow those first 2 weeks to become more present with your family, because I want to set you guys up with encouragement to have a trajectory going forward of how you approach bodybuilding. Bodybuilding can be a phenomenal thing, but also can be, let's be honest, an addiction in a very unhealthy manner. I know because firsthand I'm the one that did it. I was addicted to bodybuilding. I was addicted to my body improving. Heck, I was addicted to using performance-enhancing drugs to do so. because I wanted to elevate myself as far as I could go and as high as I could go. And in that addiction, everyone else got pushed to the side, even right after the show. So understand that nobody is making you do this. You choose to do this, but make sure that your priorities are set correctly. I can guarantee you, if you don't have a healthy relationship with your family, your wife, your children, you certainly are not going to have a healthy relationship with food. It's just not going to happen. So priorities have to come first. So I tell my guys, listen, we get back in the gym, we're going to focus on improving because you want to be a champion, 100%. But go spend time with your loved ones. Go make up for that lost time. Be present. Be the father. Be the husband that the last couple weeks probably stole from you. And make sure that you're showing up all year like this. And the next time you get ready for a show, because you build up this mental resiliency with food, it will build up mental resiliency in every other aspect of your life. One of the hardest things for humans is when they really, really feel hungry, to be able to kind of restrain themselves, so to speak, but also maintain a great composure, great posture, and attitude and mindset. We know the terms hangry, right? Well, you are deeming that your identity when you say you're hangry. You don't have to be. If you can approach hunger and shift your mindset to it actually being something good rather than being something bad, you can change your perspective and actually change it to gratitude. So it's a very big mind shift, and it's something you may have never heard from anybody in this industry, but I will tell you it's a game changer. I had to do it myself, and it has changed everything about my outlook with food. Again, I've been in all of these unhealthy, toxic mindsets. I was very unhealthy with food. Starting bodybuilding at the age of 12, by the time I was 18, there was definitely some burnout effect, and food was a very comforting thing for me post-show. You wouldn't see me eat a packet of Splenda during prep, but you better believe post-show, I let all the reins loose, and it really did get me nowhere. It just absolutely exacerbated all the side effects right after the show, and mentally, I was ashamed and guilty of it until I was able to shift that mindset and perspective. So nutritional adherency and actually having a healthy relationship with food, shifting your mindset and perspective, approaching your training and cardio methodically to allow your body to reset and reprogram. Now, guys, this is kind of episode 1. We can touch briefly on supplementation post-show. I think it's very important and vital, like I said, for your micronutrients to always be in, but make sure if you're not getting them in pre-contest, which you should, definitely post-show, and they need to be in. And then we talked about going to an IV clinic. We talked about intramuscular as well, glutathione, and making sure that we're detoxifying the liver, bringing the immune system back up, and keeping insulin sensitivity very high, which is great at doing. Focusing on sleep, making sure that we're having proper micronutrient levels of vitamin D3, K2, magnesium, like I said, zinc, copper, iron, because a lot of people are coming off of prep being very iron deficient and anemic. So making sure that you're supplementing with something like a beef liver supplement in capsule form that's from grass-fed cattle, essentially, I think is one of the purest forms to actually get it. And we could go into all the B vitamins, the B1, the B3, the B6, P5P, and sublingual B12. All these are essential as well, which we will get into on episode 2, because we could talk about that for hours. So guys, I want to leave you with this information on this episode on how to approach your post-show rebound and how to set your mind on forward progression so that you can set your body on forward progression for the rest of the year. Guys, if you like what you're hearing and what you're seeing, please hit that like and subscribe button and that bell notification so that you are notified when I drop another video. Thank you guys so much. God bless.